Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a force that, believe it or not, shapes pretty much everything you buy, sell, and trade. It's this huge trend that explains the very economic map of our world. We're talking about something called regionalism.
Okay, let's just jump right in with a single number. Get this, over 85%. Now, you're probably thinking, 85% of what? Well, in a global context, this figure points to an incredible, almost unbelievable concentration of power. So, that 85%, that's the share of all world trade that's packed into just count them, three regions: North America, Western Europe, and East Asia. I mean, think about that. The entire rest of the planet, everyone else, they're all scrambling for that little 15% that's left over. It's basically created what you could call a tripolar world economy.
And that, of course, leads us to the big question, right? The one we're going to spend the next few minutes unpacking. Why? How did our global economy get so lopsided? What in the world created these economic superregions?
Well, the answer, if you boil it all down to one word, is regionalism. Yep, that's the engine driving this full thing. So let's get into it. What does that term actually mean? Okay, so at its heart, regionalism is really just the process of countries and other groups in a specific geographic area deciding to work together more closely, especially when it comes to stuff like economics and trade. If you're looking for a perfect example, think of something like the European Union. That's regionalism in action.
But what really makes a region a region? I mean, it's got to be more than just some lines on our app, right? And it is. It's really a mix of things. You've got to have that geographical closeness, of course, but you also need a ton of interaction. We're talking trade, investment, all that stuff flying back and forth. Then you add in some shared rules, maybe some common institutions, and sometimes you even have shared cultural identities that tie it all together.
Now, here's a really crucial point. These regions, they aren't set in stone, not at all. They are constantly changing, constantly evolving. And this change can come from two directions. It can happen from above, through big government deals and international policies. But it also happens from below, driven by the everyday decisions of companies deciding where to build factories and by the movement of actual people.
So while this all feels super modern, this idea of regionalism isn't exactly new. Actually, it's having what a lot of experts call a second coming. So let's take a look at why. Why is this happening with so much force right now?
Yeah, believe it or not, the first wave of regionalism was way back in the 1960s. But the one we're living in now, the more powerful modern wave that created that 85% world we just talked about, that really got going in the 1980s. And man, it has just been picking up speed ever since.
So why the big comeback? Well, it was kind of like a perfect storm. Four big things happened. First, the old world of single-power dominance started to fade. Then, the Cold War ended, which really shuffled the deck and created a more decentralized world. At the exact same time, you had the economic explosion of the Asia-Pacific region. And finally, countries all over started shifting to export-focused strategies. All that together give these new regions a ton of autonomy and power.
Okay, so we've got a handle on what regionalism is and why it's happening, but that brings us to the great debate, the central question here. Is this trend actually good, or is it bad for the world? Is it leading us toward more cooperation, or is it just setting us up for more conflict?
And this really brings us to the two sides of the regionalism coin. On one hand, you have this idea of open regionalism. That's where these regions act as building blocks for a stronger, more connected global system. But on the other hand, you have closed regionalism, where they become stumbling blocks that just lead to a fragmented world of competing, walled-off trade blocks.
So the really urgent question for everyone in charge today is, how do we make sure we get the open version and not the closed one? So let's explore that positive case. How can these incredibly powerful regions actually help us build a stronger global future?
So how could this possibly help? Well, the argument basically unfolds in 3 steps. Step 1. When you have this deep regional cooperation, it really drives home just how much these trading partners depend on each other. You become more aware of that interdependence. Step 2. The lessons you learn and the solutions you find from solving regional problems, well, those can often be scaled up to help tackle huge global challenges. And finally, Step 3. Strong cooperation between these big regions can become the actual foundation for a more stable, more predictable global system.
Yeah, the whole idea is that if the big three, Asia, Europe, and North America, can find ways to cooperate, they can set a global tone that makes integration way more likely than fragmentation. The source material puts it perfectly. The stronger the cooperation among the three major traders, the more likely it is for the world economy to be integrated globally rather than be fragmented.
And that really leaves us with the final, critical question.
because this path isn't set in stone. The choice of whether these powerful economic regions become closed-off fortresses that divide the world, or if they become open bridges that connect it, well, that choice is being made right now. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.